spoke about data science, he got so upset. He was saying, "Why are you diluting mechanical engineering?"
No,
And
correct.
he's saying data science supposed to be with computer science, and what are you doing?
Yeah.
Then I said, "I'm sorry, I just came off." So
No, let me give
he
you the
does have no
perspective of
clue.
that. Yeah. So see, in that case, if you say that the finite element analysis, it's a mathematical tool, fine. And if you say that this tool can be only applied by the people who know algorithms, who know the mathematics, they can only be able to use it. But all the application of finite element methods or analysis is basically in engineering domain by the people who know the domain knowledge actually. So domain knowledge is very important part of any implementation. And in fact, one of the quiz I always ask, who will be the team leader for
Yes.
implementing machine learning? And
Domain
nobody
knowledge.
will give this machine learning problem to be implemented to any of the data scientists in the plant. He always would like to appoint a manager who has a domain knowledge of that particular area of manufacturing. He's supposed to drive the project. Only thing is that it's an additional tool where we need an expertise, certainly, but data scientists, people don't understand how the metal cutting process happens actually. If the data is being captured, if it is coming out without having an abstract understanding of the domain knowledge of the process, data cannot be analyzed actually. Or if you're just getting some of the outcomes of that data without pre-filtering or pre-processing, that will not make any sense. So the domain is very important. Domain knowledge is very important. And that is how I'm saying, whether it's in a robotics, whether it's an automation, and whether it's in a smart manufacturing, they all are basically being driven by the mechanical engineering, because they are going to be implemented on the electromechanical systems, and all machines, all systems are basically having a foundation mechanical there. So we are not diluting the mechanical engineering. That is what the response that I would like to give you. We are strengthening the mechanical engineering.
Yes,
Having
I
a
agree.
domain knowledge is the foremost requirement actually.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And we are just strengthening it by addition of new technologies to it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right. So this is what, if you see, is being projected. And I have also given you an assignment where I asked you to define some of these technologies.
What do you mean by, hello?
Yeah, please.
Sir, what do you mean by this modular production asset? Second last.
Modular production assets, if you see that, when we talk about the agility in the facility, agility means I will be able to reschedule, I will be able to change the layout of the facility to align for a particular type of product manufacturing. So when we are talking about the modular production assets, means my whole manufacturing is modular actually. So I can reorient, I can reconfigure the layout basically, so that it will not be a fixed line or fixed layout actually. That is the idea of having a modular production assets.
In short, programmable device all.
No, not programmable device. It's about how you lay out your facility. If you have machines actually, how you will be laying out your facility so they can be connected together to produce in whatever sequence you want to produce. So I have some of the slides for you today to discuss on that aspect. I will show you that.
Is it for a job production system?
Yeah, it's similar to job production system. So now if you see that when we are moving from mass production to customized production, we are moving towards that kind of so ultimately it's coming like it's in a job shop production. So an environment is moving toward the job shop.
Or maybe cellular manufacturing?
Yeah, it's all same. So when you say modules are, it's again a cell. It's a manufacturing cell actually.
Right.
Yes.
Sir, I don't think these are in the sequence of, their progress. Like
no, they are just being put in terms of the maximum percentage
achievement
change in the next 5 years. So means we can see that how they are going to get deep penetrated into the manufacturing.
Right.
So if you see that the predictive maintenance today, we see that it's a 28%, but the projection is that now people are now getting aware about the predictive maintenance, and everybody would like to try it out, its implementation to small scale right now. But people see that this is one of the necessity in the next 5 years. It's going to be scaled up to 66% actually. Nobody can afford an unprecedented downtime. So everybody would like to have a prediction happen before they take up the maintenance act. So they would like to do maintenance in advance and as and when it is required.
So this is considering all MSMEs, sir, right? Not only the big industries.
No, this, I'm not sure the basis of this statistics being given, but whenever they study the global economy, they may be capturing data which is mixed from all sort of industries.
Right. Because if at all we consider the big industries, they are already done with this process visualization or automation kind of thing.
Correct. So when this percentage is basically, that's what I'm saying, it's covering everyone. So
right.
If we say that it's a 30%, 28%, 29%, roughly 30%, it means that big OEMs are already being covered actually. So when we are scaling it to the next layer of 65% to 70%, it means that we want to take these technologies a deeper layer actually. So then it will be reaching to the at least the small industries, then the micro and medium, the medium and then small and micro actually.
Got it.
So when we talk about the smart manufacturing, this is what I have shown earlier also. So idea is that when we talk about manufacturing, it's not limited to manufacturing. We are talking about the embedding intelligence at odd layers. So that is how we see that this figure I have in fact discussed in one of the webinar also. Idea is that when we talk about smart manufacturing, the keyword manufacturing only says the what is happening on the machine and within the shop floor. That is what we always think about manufacturing. But today's manufacturing is basically now linked and being driven. I think one of you was mentioning about the digital thread. I have heard and I've seen, I think somewhere you have mentioned that. But this digital thread is to connect basically all levels which are being involved in manufacturing a product. So if you see that now we are talking about capturing the user specific data, and the manufacturing is basically again driven by the user specific design. And there the different tools and technologies are available. Certainly the CAD/CAM and CAE are all old concepts. Today we are talking about more collaborative design can happen so that the designers can collaborate and produce a product. Somewhere they also expect the customizations and input can happen, and maybe the quick validation can happen with the user also. So at the design stage itself, there could be a better collaboration can happen. Another concept is coming out with a generative design. So generative design, how many of you are familiar with this term, generative design?
No, sir, I'm not.
Yeah, so Atul has
Also not. No idea, sir.
So generative design is basically the concept. Now people are trying to experiment with it. It basically, if you give your requirement or the functional requirement, if you define that I need this much strength at this location, I need this much weight in the product. And if you define all the functional things, for example, I define the free body diagram, I say this much torque will be coming over here, this much will be the force that will be applied at this location. Then the computer will be generating multiple options of that design. So that is what the generative design. So all possible solutions are being displayed to you, meeting the same functional requirements. And then you will see that, and this is more feasible when people are talking about additive manufacturing, because they are able to produce whatever can be designed actually. That is what the idea. So people are evaluating multiple options of the same day. And many times we may not be able to think about. Normally a designer can thought one or two concepts of the design actually, or he can just brainstorm and then again see some of the features can be added to that. But when we use computers to generate those options for us, so I think those all have gone through the understanding of the evolutionary algorithms. They normally produce a population of the outcome. And there you will be able to find out which one is near to the fitness, or based on the fitness, you can just select which would be the more appropriate fit for your requirements. So that way, this concept of generative design, I think Autodesk is the one who start promoting this, and some of these features are available in their product Fusion 360. I think they are having one product which is available where you can create more generative options. So it means that it give you 20, 30, maybe 100 options for the same functional requirement. Now you can just select which one you want to take for the next level of analysis, and you can get a much better part meeting your requirements. So that is the concept of the generative design. Similarly, for the manufacturing, there are many technology options are available over here. So idea is that we would like to have the impact happening at all levels of engagement with the customer. So if you see that the design inputs being captured from the customer, it's being utilized to design the product. I'm sure in one of the webinar we discussed about that Adidas shoe example. So that is one of the example where the data has been captured by making the customer wear the instrumented shoe, so that depending on how he walk, how he run, for which sport he want to use a shoe, so that data is being collected from the user itself, and from there the manufacturing concept can be started, and then slowly that the manufacturing can happen for that particular design that is being identified and customized for the product. So these kind of implementations are possible when we see that the smart manufacturing penetration is now made at all layers. Similarly, once the product is being manufactured, we would also be interested in how the product is being used by the customer. So that is how we would like to have digital product. So there's a concept of digital enterprise. Again, I'm sure that I have shared one paper on this, whether you gone through it or not. It's a very good explanation about the digital enterprise. It's talk about the digital design, digital manufacturing, digital supply chain, digital product actually. So there it comes means how we will be still connected with the product after it is being manufactured. And some of the very useful information that is being captured from the product is helpful in basically modifying the designs also. The real-time user feedback that is coming from the usage is very much helpful tool in the design. So the information coming from the product, similarly the same information being available to the people who are doing servicing. So it's basically how the product is being designed, manufactured, used, and serviced. Try to put the intelligence at all layers, basically all levels. That is what we are looking forward, the impact of the smart manufacturing. Then this was also being discussed because the biggest advantage, or I should say the potential that people see when they implement the smart manufacturing is to accelerate the decision making, and that is what I have explained and very nicely in one of the sequence of the delays that can happen once the event takes place. I'm sure that you remember those delays. Anyone spell it out? What are those latencies that we discussed? Can any one of you, I'm sure that you have seen that adaptation slides.
Even T2, T3 you're talking about.
No, we are not talking about it. There are latencies when there is an event happened in the factory where I've shown that there's a machine which shows that there's a 75-degree centigrade temperature rise. Yes. So there are 4 latencies I have explained actually, and then that will result in basically the significant production loss. So if you see that the first one is the insight latency, then the second one is the analysis latency, then decision latency, and finally is the action latency. So today, if you go by that, the delays are happening at all levels basically. First of all, the information is not known at all. Supervisor don't know whether the machine is running at their optimal parameters or not. Once it comes to his notice, then he start finding out what could be the reasons for that. Then he will be doing some analysis on the information that is being available, plan to take some corrective actions on that, and finally the actions get implemented. So these are the different layers. The less technologies you are using today, this can extend from 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours kind of a duration. So when we think about implementing smart manufacturing, one of the biggest driver for this is the acceleration of the corporate decision making. How we can take right decisions based on the right information coming from the various data sources. And finally, how the adaptation takes place. Means once you have taken decision, how those decisions can be implemented. So that is the first part of this. Second part, we are talking about the agility, because we would like to implement more real-time changes. So that is what I have given the assignments to you today also. I have asked one question related to the real time. So please think on it. I'm not discussing right now. What kind of real-time changes are expected in a manufacturing environment? So through that thinking, you will be able to at least go a little deeper in understanding the manufacturing environment. Right? So now we'll discuss quickly these key characteristics of the smart manufacturing implementation. And I will just quickly explain these blocks. So because now we will be discussing in a different perspective. Now, please keep this motivation for implementation. So now when I'm trying to implement, how can I do that? So now see, same physics we study in class 10th, same physics we study at class 12, same physics we study at class or the BSc or the engineering level. Only thing is that the different perspective keep on changing actually, and the depth will keep on changing. So though we will be discussing the same approach, we are talking about connecting the facilities, connecting the assets. But how now we will be thinking a layer below, basically how this can be done and what I'm trying to build over that data, what I'm trying to achieve on top of that, what I'm going to collect as the data right now. So if you see here in the previous discussions also, we were talking about the data points that we want to capture on the machines, the kind of sensors we will be integrating on the machines. But the objective here is that once you have the data, what you are going to do with that. So when I say connected, so physically they are connected. Physically, I have placed all the data sources onto the system. But now we have to think in that direction, how we will be utilizing this data. So we will be talking about more real-time collaborations, real-time data enabling for collaborations. Now you have to think about this. You have to do more brainstorming. Once I have the data, what kind of collaborations we are expecting, what kind of collaboration we would like to build upon. So this will be giving you a little more insight when we are talking about the applications, when we are talking about the visualizations. So we are talking about the collaboration between the supplier and the customer. So now once you have a data, I would like to hear from you what kind of real-time collaboration you want to build between the suppliers and the customer. So you are a manufacturing facility. On one side, you have a suppliers to you as an OEM, you have a suppliers to you. You have a customers on the other side, those who are buying your product. Now you as a manufacturing organization, you have all the data sources being implemented. Now, what is your thinking? Means what type of real-time collaboration you would like to have between the suppliers and customers? Yes, Ganesh, you were explaining something.
Sir, bill of material, the inventory of each one from the supplier for my production, how much I'm having it. And from the customer perspective, we can tell them if they go for make to order style of manufacturing strategy, we can inform them your product at what stage it is being manufactured. They can visually see it.
Great.
They get excited.
And what kind of a manufacturing advantage you are going to take, or what kind of a competitive advantage you will have with this kind of a customers and suppliers?
Basically, a customer centric. We can, they
yes. So ultimately, it comes out to be more competitive because the market is like that only, and you will be building more loyalty with your customers and suppliers actually. Anyone else would like to mention that what kind of collaboration you will see, or what kind of advantage you will see from this collaboration that you can establish?
So maybe you will be able to inform the exact time or maybe the cost, if at all any modifications are going to happen. So maybe cost of customization, the time when the delivery will be made, you will be able to reach to larger number of customers because of presence on the web or something of that sort.
Yeah, good.
I think all
Cus-
customers will appreciate transparency into the manufacturing process.
Yeah,
And
correct.
also, if a customer makes some kind of special order, then the supplier is equipped. You as a manufacturing facility will receive the raw material faster if the supplier is notified immediately and everyone has insight into the order.
Correct. Good. I think that's right. It's a
I
right
think-
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, sir, customization of the product will be the most, in terms of in case of cars, suppose many times when you go to showroom and we want the color of the car is so and so, but we want that the side mirror should be of different color,
Correct.
or maybe the interior seats we don't want of that color which is supplied by the industry. But the moment I mention my choices, then it should directly go to the factory, and that lot of manufacturing can be started, or that particular customized car can be start assembling, and I can get it in within time.
Even if you'll not think about the customization at a large scale, even the basic choices basically going to give a
advantage.
I've seen that people are taking decisions based on that itself. For example, if I visited a Maruti showroom and I am intent to buy a car actually, and I see that I am preferring a blue color model should be available to me.
Yes.
And then today, if you see that the day I visited the showroom, it says it's not available. Then again, after some days, he said it will take another 15 days for this model color to be available.
Right.
Immediately, customer change the choice. He immediately see that another make is available, and which are maybe the Hyundai, he can see that actually. And if a blue is available, immediately he will buy next day. So nobody is going to wait for another 15. Forget about the customization is something different. And this is the practical thing people are using actually. Decisions are based on such parameters actually.
Right.
Sir, Lenscraft could be a best example in the website. You can take a picture of you and then you can...
Yeah, Lenscraft. Yeah, correct. So yeah, that's really nice. And you have taken a very nice example. They have adopted the optics manufacturing completely with robotics. So you can study, because that's a good case study for anyone who would like to understand the smart manufacturing implementation, how they are capturing the data from the customer. They are using the mobile applications. They are giving you all the options available with them. The moment you choose a particular product, they will initiate the manufacturing. You may be able to choose the type of lenses also. They will be engaging their robotic manufacturing to produce that particular frame and the fitting for the lenses. And the moment they dispatch the product, they will send you a notification. So that's a very good example of connecting the customer basically, and how manufacturing is aligned to do that. Good, I think that's nice. So next thing I would like to understand, because this block only share with you the collaboration between the suppliers and customer. What about the collaboration within the departments in the organization? So that is another important domain that is very much required, and it is missing today. So when we are talking about the connected, we are talking about the connectivity between the departments also, the production, the quality, the maintenance, and the process engineering. Today, even this is not connected. So we see that you have some data that is coming to the production. Let's take an example of a rejection itself. For example, the quality people observe certain rejections on the floor. They recorded some observations. They shared with the production people that these are the rejections. Now, process engineering people come to know this very late. So production people initially will try to correct those things at their own level. I'm just sharing this from my own experience working with Tata Motors. This is happening in the shop floor because I have seen this kind of things. And many times we found that there is some design changes being communicated by the process engineering people. And the changes has happened actually on the machine, but maintenance people rarely know about that. They don't have, they still take the blueprint of the old drawings. They are searching some of these parts in the drawing, but they are not physically present. They are being changed actually. The modification has happened. So many times this kind of an information is missing. So this is again a very important aspect that we would like to have a more real-time collaboration being built within the departments in the organization also. So this block says the connected means, though I have installed the sensors, I have a data source, but how I can utilize this data source, how can I utilize this information to collaborate between the suppliers and customer on one side, and at the same time to collaborate within my own departments, my own various departments in the manufacturing facility itself. So I think that is the idea behind this discussion on the connected part.
So
Now,
when the collaboration happen within the company, those are called vertical integration. Is that correct, sir?
Which integration?
Vertical integration.
Vertical, actually, you are saying. Yeah, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
No, you mean that?
Is it horizontal integration or vertical integration?
No, this is an horizontal integration within the department.
Horizontal integration. Okay. Thank you.
So we are talking about now the connected part. Now we'll see that the optimization basically. Now what I am expecting out of this implementation, I would like to have my production facility more reliable, more predictable. So these are the two very important words in the today's manufacturing scenario. That if I pick up an order for making 10,000 pieces, and I commit a delivery to someone, to the customer actually. Now, once I bring that order back, and that is what always the dilemma between the guys who collect the sales order and the guys who are executing the manufacturing or the production, the facility is not that reliable and predictable. Though I have taken and committed the order for making these 10,000 pieces and to deliver in 3 days, but once I come back and see that it can keep on varying because of certain issues, it means that I'm not running my own facility in an optimized way. So that is the way, if you see here, I want a deterministic outcome. So I can say that my facility is able to produce 1,500 parts per day and consistently. So that kind of things can build up only when we talk about increased asset uptime, and then how you will improve the production efficiency and how you will be monitoring. So this is one of the key component that we keep on discussing about the OEE. How can I measure that? So right now this information is missing. I am not even aware about the OEE of the existing machines in my plant. So I think Ganesh, for you, this is a good exercise. You can even try to collect some of the data in that production facility that you have shown in the slide.
Sure,
just try to assess that, means whether we are capturing this OEE or not. If it is there, do I have an indicator that which machines are available, which machines are giving me the right quality of the product that I'm expecting? So these information blocks are missing in between actually. So that is how, see, unless you are not having this, we may not be able to meet this. So if I am able to predict, I will be able to increase the uptime of my equipments, and I will be able to do production more reliably. One good indicator, if you can see that this is the most important parameter in terms of the data centers. See that this is 99.5, 99.9, that kind of an uptime that they can give for their servers. So now you see the sensitivity. We don't want any interruption on the data exchange from the website. That is how we are expecting that the server uptime should be of that order. Now to maintain that uptime, they will be ensuring that they will be delivering you the reliable service. Similarly is the kind of a reliability all your mobile communication exchanges are committing today. So they are giving you at least that kind of an uptime. You never found that the network is down and your mobile phone is not working. So some of these things are already implemented in the service domain. We are now expecting that the same thing should also happen with the manufacturing. So that is where the optimization comes into picture. And to implement the same, we look forward that wherever it is possible to use automated material handling and the production system. And this is going to impact significantly the three components, the quality, cost, and delivery. So we have to keep the systems running in optimized way. Then only you will be able to meet the targets for QCD. So you will be able to deliver good quality at the lowest cost and committed delivery. So that is how it's feasible once you are able to run them in an optimized way. And the transparency, I think that's what we were talking about, to building a more real-time collaborations, bring it out more transparency. So the two things, basically, you will be able to track the demand which the customers are expecting, and you will be aligning your production system according to that. At the same time, all the decision making happening is making is based on the real data. We are not guessing. We are not saying this machine fails because of this may happen. We are now deterministic and saying that this is the reason for this, because in the past this has happened and this is happening multiple times. Now I have a data, actually. I can claim that this outcome is based on this incident. So that's a very important part. Once you build the transparency, you will be able to take more decisions which are based on the data. And second thing, you will be able to do more real-time predictions and the forecast based on the interaction that you can have with your customers and suppliers. Next characteristics is basically about proactive measures. Means what kind of proactive measures you can take based on the data that you have already started collecting today. So this is what we were saying, the predictive maintenance, which is going to change from 28% to 68% or so. The reason that we would like to predict the anomaly, and we can detect that in time, and also we would like to come out with a resolution for the same. So if you are able to predict the anomaly identification, and then maybe able to come out with a resolution before the actual failure happens. So these kind of proactive measures will save a lot of time in the production environment. Post that, we also look forward that automated restocking and replenishment, because store management is another big area, especially in terms of the inventory. I know that people are able to maintain an inventory of critical failure parts even for many months, because the lead time is so high, and most of the time we may not be able to predict that when this part can fail. So maintaining an inventory of many such items basically are blocking the money, actually. So how we can predict what's the possibility and the probability of the failure of that particular component, and linked to that, if you are able to build a system which can help you in doing the automated restocking and the replenishment, then you will be able to block less amount of the money in the inventory. Another area is basically the identification of the supplier quality issues, because most of the time we are implementing the measures in our own manufacturing facility. So if you are connected with the suppliers, and most of the OEMs are connected with the suppliers, because a good percentage of the components are being manufactured by the ancillaries. So if you're not able to monitor the quality of the suppliers, you will be ending up getting more surprises when they will arrive at your facility. And if you are preparing a production line for making so many vehicles or so many products, and then if you start inspecting the product that is being received from the supplier end, then if you find a lot of rejections, if it is not meeting your requirement, then last moment it's very difficult to take decisions, and the options are very limited. So in that case, if you have a continuous monitoring, continuous quality check at the supplier end, it will help you in building a more resilient system, actually. So second thing is the real-time safety monitoring, because that is another proactive approach, because we would like to maintain such systems in a way so that less number of accidents can happen in the factory floor. So that's a very good step for the reduction of the accidents in the facilities. Then it comes to the agility. This is most, as I was discussing about the aspect of the corporate decision making and adaptation. And the second advantage, we are talking about the agility. It means that we would like to have more flexible and adaptable schedulings and changeover. So if the demand for a particular component falls, if the requirement changes, how flexible I am to take a different production schedule. So that is what is required when we are talking about the agility. We can implement a product change in the real time. We can produce a different product mix also. And this is possible. That is what I was mentioning, and you were asking about the same, the modular layout. So this is what we are expecting, that configurable factory layout and equipments. Means how can you configure your current production layout so that you will be able to produce a different product, a different mix of the products itself. And industries are doing this. I think some of them are now understood that they may not be having a consistent demand for a particular model. Even the automotive manufacturers are producing a mix, and they are designing new lines in such a way that they will be able to produce multiple models on the same line. So that configurable part is now coming into the layout design itself. For new facilities, whoever is designing, they always be keeping this in mind, that it's not designed for just mass production of one type of model. It's going to be designed for manufacturing a mix of the products. So I think with this, we have already seen the challenges on the manufacturing side, and these are the technologies we have seen by now, and understand to some extent that possibly how we can utilize some of these technologies to address these challenges. So it's again a point of brainstorming, rather than I'm feeding you that this will help in reducing this. Please try to do a brainstorming and thinking about this. Which technology is going to help me in meeting or reducing the challenges which are shown on the left-hand side? So this is an important exercise. You think on it. If I'm talking about the higher percentage rejections, what are the cause of that rejections, and how I can be able to control those rejections? How can I know about that this much rejection is going on? So which technology will help you in reducing the rejection? Same is for the other challenges. You can do a match for this. So I think it's 6:30. We would like to use another 30 minutes for the discussion on the implementation part that Vishnu has prepared for tomorrow. So I'm just stopping over here. Let me see that if there's anything important to be, because some of these things we will discuss as we go along in the implementation part of the technology. So I think that's fair enough. I've given you good ideas. So these things looks very simple. Everybody is talking about this, but we are always, as I was explaining, we are thinking from the perspective of the implementations. Now, if somebody reports some of the challenges in their facility, and once I'm familiar with the technology, now I understand the pros and cons of the technology, the possibilities of its implementation, what all is required to implement the same technology. Then I will be able to identify which technology can be used to solve a particular problem. So I think that is all from my side in this session. We can have, though I am also finding that one session I am able to take every week, that is good enough. But certainly in the coming courses, we'll see that if it is required more interaction, we can define that also. But for this course, we have one more on the project actually. That is what. So Anupji has joined. Anupji, quick input for them. Anything you have for the project, because now they are only few days behind the project. And Ganesh has already shared something to me. Same way, if you want to take our feedback before you finalize, you can share with us, and we can share with you quick inputs on the same.
Sir, Atul speaking.
Yeah, Atul.
Sir, I am facing a little bit of a problem when it comes to the project. Sir, I am residing in Mumbai, and the basis for the, sir, I have understood all the technologies you have spoken about, all the challenges and the technologies that can be used to get insight and improve efficiencies. Sir, but I am not able to find a proper subject to act upon. I, in an individual capacity, don't have access to my college laboratories right now. And I, in my network, through my parents, I have found two people who own somewhat manufacturing facilities. One being my friend's, my friend's father owns two galas, wherein he does small types of machining work, which is completely manual, no amount of zero automation over there. And the best pitch I could give him was that I will help improve insight for the operator and reduce improve quality control.
How many machines he may be having?
Sir, he has a number of lathe machines and one or two milling machines, but all are manually operated through skilled operators. And they are absolutely not interested in any form of automation.
That is okay. I think
Yes, sir.
so. In fact, the example that we discussed also, we are not automating the machine operations.
Yes, sir.
We are trying to help even the operator also. So
Yes, sir.
maybe he may also be facing challenge with the people who are operating the machines, because
Right.
once we are dependent on the skill of the operator to give me the quality. So I think that kind of solutions may also be helpful.
Right, sir. Sir, but it will be a very hypothetical project from my side because I'm not able to do a site visit.
Yeah, I understand that part, but even conceiving that, and as you said, you already get connected with someone who owns similar, because that is again a very good, I should say, the case study or a learning for you, because we find that at most of the micro scale manufacturing, you will find people like that only.
Right, sir.
So if any of these solutions or any of your suggestions excite him at least to think about that, that is also a good outcome.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So I think you can just do that project itself. It's fine. I think that's equally good.
Okay.
Come out with a good propositions that you can make to make to him. Let's take the feedback, what he feels basically.
Right, sir.
Yeah, that is also good.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Fine. So Vishnu, are you ready now?
Yes, sir.
So we have 15-20 minutes. I think you can just cover up those basic things. You can share your slide.
Yes, sir.
So basic things we have already discussed. So wherever you would like to highlight upon the implementation part,
Yes,
you can just focus on those aspects. And then in between, I will also pitch in and we will be discussing on those things. So
Yes,
you
sir.
can share your screen and then we'll discuss.
Sure. I guess the screen is visible. Good evening, everyone. So today we will be focusing on converting the legacy machines to smart machines. As Atul sir was saying earlier, like he wants to automate a conventional machine like lathe or milling machine. So I hope this presentation will help him further for implementing in his project. So with that note, I am going to throw a question for you all guys, like what is smart machine? So when I say smart machine, what comes into your mind? If anyone can answer.
Machine health monitoring.
Okay.
Machine knows how to collect data, analyze by itself, and then give feedback.
Yes, very good.
And maybe actuator that is to change some parameters if it comes to. It's
Yeah.
not sensing, it could be the feedback also given to the person.
Yeah.
Collect the data and based on the data, take the decision.
Yes. Yes. Everything is a correct answer. So I'll just explain my point of view, what I have understood from what a smart machine is. Basically, a machine should be having the capability to change dynamically in a changing environment. So if something is going on process, so the machine should know that something external factor also may take place and it will affect the machine's performance. So basically, it should be adaptable to change in environment. Second thing is, as Ganesh sir told, smart system should have a feedback control. Basically, in our case, the sensors would be the feedback control, wherein sensor will give me some value. Like say, for example, if I'm working in a Coca-Cola industry and a cola bottle is coming or not, I want to find it out. Using a sensor, I will get to know that whether the bottle is reached to some conveyor belt or not. So that kind of feedback control system a machine should contain if it is a smart machine. And when we talk about a smart machine, the M2M, which is machine to machine communication, should also be there. Using some industrial protocols, machine should not be independent one. It should be connected with other machines also. So if I have to do some 2-3 operations with 2-3 machines, then a machine should know that when it has to be ready, so that machine one, for example, it has completed some process, then machine 2 should be available to take the product and further do the second process or third process, etc. So similarly, ML or AI models, basically the machine learning and artificial intelligence models should be coming into the picture, where whatever the data which we receive from the controller or using some sensors, the model should be collecting some data, like a history of data, and then using which we will create some kind of statistics, and then we will find some meaningful output from the ML or AI models. So fifth one is the most important one. The machine should be secure, flexible, efficient, and reliable. So I have just given some example for the closed loop system. So the next question will be why we are going for legacy machines, if anyone can answer.
The existing small scale micro companies, they all have legacy machines.
Okay.
They
And
may
time
not,
wasted.
they may or may not be affordable to buy smart machines. So we need to help them.
Okay. Anyone else?
These machines have proved that they are useful, so we would like to continue their usefulness or utility in
Yes. Yes. Correct. So what I think is that a person who is trying to make some meaningful output of a smart machine or trying to have a smart machine, he shouldn't be investing more on the machine itself. So if there is a machine already available with him, so he shouldn't be investing so much of amount in buying a new machine. So there we can say that investment we can be reduced buying a new machine, and some alteration can be made into the existing machine, which can be made into smart using some sensors and actuators. I can just alter the machine so that it won't be affecting my performance of the machine, as well as it will be getting smart parallelly. So commonly available machines, these are like legacy machines are like used like 60, 70 years old machines are also still used in factories. And since India is more of industry 2.0, so people should be using these kinds of smart machines implementation to the legacy machines, so that they can come out with some productive analysis or kind of get to know how the machine is health wise. And then CNC machines are required a less amount of actual integration with so many sensors and actuators, because since it is a CNC machine, it is already a semi-autonomous machine, so it contains sensors and every safety features in it. So only thing that when we talk about a legacy machine to make it smart, then the CNC machine is also considered as a legacy machine, and this CNC machine should be able to give us some meaningful data. So whatever the CNC machine that is available in any industry, the CNC machine, the company provider used to log the logics, and then he used to give the machine which can be only programmed and operated. So we should have the read and write access for the some of the logics, which is more important for us to find out the machine's performance or quality of the machine. So in that case, CNC machine also comes into part of implementing the smart machines kind of thing. Then to main thing is to reduce the workload for the labor. So now the since CNC machine has come, manually no one is moving the axis and doing the work. Everything is operated using 3-axis system or 4-axis system. So anyways, if we want to have a control over that particular machine as well, then we have to go for implementing this smart manufacturing or smart machine making of smart machine. And then for monitoring purpose, as we think of only a labor point of view, we should also be thinking about a plant manager or a manager who is in charge of a particular line or a whole plant itself. So for him, it will be tedious for him to visit or to get the papers and then analyze each kind of fault in single machine. So if he has some data regarding each machine health status, then it will be easy for him to find out what is actually happening and how often it is happening. the reports can be generated digitally so that less paperwork can be done. So this is basic introduction of how what is legacy machine is and how we are going to implement smart machine. So with this note, whatever we have implemented for our smart lathe machine. So I am just giving you a brief idea about how to convert a conventional machine to a smart machine. So there are few points that I would like to highlight. So first point is identifying the crucial things to be monitored or controlled. So this point helps us to find out what kind of automation that we are looking for in a particular machine, what kind of process we are trying to monitor or having a feedback over it, and then how we are going to predict or to read the performance of the particular machine that we are trying to implement. So second thing is what kind of scope automating things can be made so that the labor work can be reduced. So that has to be identified. And then selection of BOM with respect to your budget. So suppose if you want to only invest 1 lakh rupees for the converting a legacy machine into a smart machine, then depending upon that, the what kind of amount of automation should be given and what kind of uh, budget should be given for implementing or using software can be divided, and accordingly the BOM will be made. So the fourth one is the main thing. When you do this three ground work, then you will be coming out with a clear picture that what will be the workflow of the processes. So understanding the workflow is very important since every machine has its own kind of processes going on in it. So understanding that and how it will affect the when you are automating something, that has to be considered, and then making some wiring diagrams and component diagrams so that you won't make any errors while implementing the same in the machine, and what kind of softwares you will be requiring for making it smart machine. So that is also very important. You can always focus on going on open sources so that you can reduce some amount of money investing into that one. And then tags to be monitored, what kind of data you will be requiring, what kind of tags that will be used for controlling or monitoring purposes for a particular machine, that has to be identified. And then communication protocol, which is basic thing to take the data out of the controller or any conventional machine, and then feed it to some other software or hardware so that further analyticals can be made out of it. And then what kind of features that we are focusing for a particular machine that we are trying to implement, that has to be well known before implementing. So whatever we have implemented for the smart lathe machine in our facility, which is a sub project of cyber physical factory, so that I will be just going through with one by one. So I have mentioned about the smart lathe machine architecture, wherein what kind of sensors, what kind of features will be integrated with the particular controller that I am going to use, and what kind of machine I am using, and what kind of data will be coming out of the particular controller to my MES system so that I can give it to the manager or a plant supervisor or operator even. So these kinds of picture will be made once you are clear about what kind of machine implementation that you are going to do for a particular machine. So in this one, if you can see, displacement sensor is used for depth of cut, and then a displacement sensor used for a feed rate, inductive sensor is used for RPM, inductive sensor is used for key presence, vibration sensor for finding the tool vibration when it is cutting some raw product, and then temperature sensor for monitoring the temperature of the machine, and then energy meter for of course to find the power consumption of a machine, and then RFID is for securing the machine from unauthorized people. So here you will be able to find out these kinds of sensors data, and what kind of communication it is going to make with the controller when you are clear with the BOM. So these kinds of conclusion will come only from the BOM. So when you compare with 4 or 5 companies, and when you are clear with the clear with the implementation that you would like to do, then you will be coming out with the architecture something like this. So the BOM is something that takes a time consuming process, but this is the critical one which will affect the entire implementation. So if I'm going to implement if I'm going to integrate a feed rate has to be controlled using a displacement sensor, then what kind of a displacement sensor I have to use, what kind of mm it should have, what kind of closeness or proximity it should have with the machine. Everything has to be made confirmed using when you are creating a BOM. So in this case, when we were trying to finalize the BOM, we were come up with lots of options, and finally we have come up with this particular product that you are seeing right now. So here, say for example, if you can see in the reason for choosing column, traverse length of the axis for feed rate is approximately 1200 mm. So in a particular that lathe machine that I'm talking about, it has a feed rate of like 0 to 100, 1200 mm, wherein we have purchased, if you can see in the model number, PMI 960. So it can be approximately, you can keep it like 900 mm or something. So why we are choosing this 900 mm displacement sensor and not 1200 mm? So if you can see a lathe machine, at the last, what you can say, tool post can be moving from one end to the chuck end. So one end will be mostly not important as such. So the raw product won't be that much big. So in order to reduce that cost, there we have considered only 900 mm. And if you can see in the tool post cannot cross over the chuck and it cannot go inside. So there also we can reduce the that we are considering. These kinds of reduction and then this kind of ideation should be very clear when you are creating the BOM, so that your cost will be directly reflecting when you are implementing this or buying the particular component that you would like to integrate. Similarly, this second one is for the depth of cut, which is I will show you in the next slides. I will just give you a glimpse of what we have implemented. And then positioning element, this one, third one that you are seeing is comes along with this first and second sensor. So this is the particular product that will be moving on top of this displacement sensor, so that you will get the coordinate. So if you know the coordinate, then you can do with some math equations to find the feed rate or depth of cut with respect to time. So that is the idea of implementing this two displacement sensor with finding out the parameters like feed rate and depth of cut. So main idea is to here implement this analog sensors to make the analogous value to digitization. So when we implement this
resolution is another important criteria. Yeah, Vishnu, as you were mentioning, the resolution of these sensors, because as you increase the length of the sensing, the resolution will decrease. So mostly depth of cut, if you're talking about, we are quite sensitive for the depth of cut. So whether you are measuring in 0.1 millimeter resolution or if you are measuring in 0.5 millimeter resolution, it makes a lot of difference to that. So whenever we are identifying a sensor, and everything is linked to the cost also. So that is how I think at the same time, technical part as well as the commercial part, you need to keep in mind while making such choices.
Yeah, so then why we are doing these kinds of sensor implementation is that a particular sensor will give me some value in digital format. So I am avoiding completely analogous value. Anyone coming and giving some kind of feed rate without knowing what kind of feed he is giving. So I want to avoid that. I want to know what kind of data or what kind of feed rate he is giving for a particular product. I want to identify. So for that purpose only, we have identified these sensors and integrated also. Similarly, a proximity sensor, if we are talking about it, then we have to see how near the material is going to be and how often it has to be sensing. So we have implemented this RPM parameter, which is using a proximity sensor, and it is working in 500 hertz. So for a second, it can be like 1 by 500. So that will be the time required for finding out how much times of pulse it will be generating. So our chuck is like rotating in 500 rpm speed, then how much the sensor will be sensing it to find out the number of rotation of the chuck. That has to be found out when it is if you want to find the tool cycle or the tool life of the tool life, then we have to find the number of rotation or number of cycles it is removing the raw material. So to find that, we have used this particular proximity sensor for finding out the RPM. So similarly, these kinds of BOM should be made clear when you are selecting for a going for a implementation or integration. And then workflow. So these workflow I have made it for our lathe machine. So what kind of work steps it has to be followed? Like once the mains are on and login to HMI is done, operator or a student coming to work in that particular machine will be given a RFID reader tag. So using that, you will be showing in front of the RFID reader, and you will get the authorization. After which he can start the cycle. So earlier a person comes, the machine was already on, energy is being consumed. Now through this kinds of step by step sequence, we are we are reducing the consumption of the energy. So once he started the cycle start, then I will get to know that he has started the cycle and the motor is on. So then you will select a model, particular model or a new model, depending upon its uh, is requirement. You will be selecting a model, and then you will be loading the raw material to the chuck, and then you will be confirming every steps that he is making, so that when he says that I have done everything correct, but it is not working, or it is not getting the he is not getting the particular outcome of a product, then we will get to know by reading through these kinds of data that whether he has loaded the part material or not, or whether he has given the set of whether he has set the speed levers manually or not. Since it is a more of a manual machine, so every data has to be inputted to a controller or to given to a HMI, so that we can get to know that in practically how is going through the entire process for making some product out of it. So then you will be setting the tool post manually, keeping it some 45-degree or 90-degree for operation, and then you will set the speed. Once the speed is set, you will confirm whether he has done the speed settings or not. And then motor forward using levers. You will be using a lever in between to rotate the motor, whether he wants to do the operation in forward or reverse. And then confirmation for each operation will be given. Say for example, he is making some product with chamfering, facing, turning, and then threading also. So each process after completing or setting up the tool to particular degree, you will be confirming it with the HMI, so that we will get to know whether he has done such settings before doing these operations or not. And then once the cycle is stopped, the final product will be taken out, and it will be asking whether the product is good or not. So if it is a product is good, then it will be further sent to analyze it for roughness measurement or something like that. If it is not good, then and there the supervisor will take that product and give it to him and tell him to do rework at that time itself or even later. So depending on that, you will be logging off from the system using HMI logout button, and then it will be returned to the tag will be returned to the supervisor. These kinds of some kinds of work sequence should be made for each machine that you are going to implement, so that you will be very clear that what kind of data I will be requiring and what kind of data should be monitored, so that the machine won't get affected, or the operator won't get won't be using the or bypassing the machine usage. So the next one is wiring diagram. So you should be very clear with what kind of sensors that you are going to mount, what kind of hardware that you are going to integrate with such a machine. Then you should be very clear about electrical, because this will ultimately impact the whole machine, because if something is short circuited, then the entire machine will collapse. So here if you can see, I just made a rough wiring diagram for the lathe machine. SMPS is there. This is my PLC. that you're seeing. This is my smart energy meter. And then these are some terminals used for routing or using some 24 or 0 volts wiring purposes. And then these are my relays that I've used. And then these are the sensors. So the topmost, if you can see, feed rate sensor is available, which is a 3-wire type sensor. So it has 24 volt and then 0 volt and the output. So I must be clear that whether the 24 should be going to this particular terminal, and then 0 volt should be going to this particular terminal, and then the output will be connected to which channel, like it is analog or digital. In digital, what number I have to identify and then put it in such a fashion so that I won't be coming into the wiring diagram again and again and see for what kind of connection I have made. Once it is done, then once you are clear about what kind of wiring you are going to make, then for the programming part, you will be very clear that what will be mapped with 0 channel or first channel, etc. So similarly, a relay can be used for safety purposes. When an output from a GOC or the PLC that we are using is given, then it will trigger 24 volt, and then output will be coming, which will be used to control an actuator or something like that. So here, when we were implementing in lathe machine, we have used a method like cycle start and stop, which is actually not present in a conventional machine. So what we did is we used a contactor and a relay. So output or input from a PLC is given using some button. Once the button is triggered, it will give me some 24 volt output. From that, relay will be energized, which will energize the contactor. So the contactor works on 230 volt, and my PLC I am having is 24 volt. So in between, I have used this relay so that I can trigger a 230 volt contactor using PLC. So by this, I am having control over the machine. Like I can start whenever I want and then stop whenever the process is complete, or in between if I want to complete it. So this is basically giving you some kind of pictorial representation of a wiring diagram, so that when you are going for integrating these kinds of sensors, then it will be very helpful, and you know how much length of wire should be used and where it has to be plugged in. So this is the actual machine that you are seeing, which we are discussing all through these slides. So the left one that you are seeing is the control panel with the tower light, and then this is the entire picture of the machine. Yeah, on top we have integrated this control panel. This is a PLC along with the HMI also. So inbuilt, it comes with PLC and HMI. So here we can see white buttons are there. These are the start button and stop button that we have tried to implement. Below, if you can see, energy meter is also there, which gives me the current and voltage readings out of the machine. So this is the right one that you are seeing is a temperature sensor, which is mounted in this machine near the bearings, so that when a bearing is getting heated, a sensor gives me the reading. Depending upon that, whether I have to stop the process or should I be giving some warning, that will be made in the logics. So again, here if you can see Allen key is put into a stand. This is used to tighten the raw product onto the chuck. So when the product is mounted or tightened, the particular Allen key must be removed from this chuck, and that it has to be placed somewhere else. So we have implemented here, we can say operator safety or also machine safety. So what it does is basically when the Allen key is placed in this folder, below we have integrated a proximity sensor, which will say whether my Allen key is present or not. Once the Allen key is present, then only my start button itself will work. So in that way, I am reducing the accidents that are made in the conventional machines. Similarly, I am, as I said earlier, the RPM is being calculated by this inductive sensor. So we have just drilled one hole, and then we have integrated this metal piece to this nearby sensor, so that it can sense when the chuck is rotating. The displacement sensor that I was talking about on the top right corner, you can see this is for the depth of cut actually. So when the axis moves towards the inside, the material of removal of material will be happening. So that particular coordinate I'll be getting here, and depending upon that formula will be used to find out how much depth of cut I am giving. Similarly, it is done for the feed rate also. Feed rate is basically moving towards the material, and removal of material is depth of cut. So then we come back to this software environment. So here we have used GOC HMI, which is a Mitsubishi make, and it is giving software open source, which is so Codesys development tool is basically a open source software which can be used to create some kind of instructions that you want, or you can create logics in uh, logics, and then you can implement in any kind of PLC that it is compatible with. So here, this environment, I just want to show you a gist of it. So I just added a PLC picture here, how it is coded, and similarly how the HMI will be looking. So here I have just mentioned the NO with the start button, and then I have energized with the coil lamp. So similarly, a button will be used here, login, and then an indicator will be placed. So when I give a start button in my PLC, I'll get to know using this indicator that whether the machine is on or not. So some kind of human machine interface is also made into this particular machine, so that it will be easy for the operator. So coming back to this list of tags for the smart lathe machine. So here we are concentrating on 4 different things. One is performance management tags. The second is maintenance tags. Third is common tags like cycle start or stop. And then fourth one is process tags. So these kinds of tags are being controlled or read to find the performance of the machine basically. Here in performance managed tags, we will be identifying whether downtime has happened or not, and what are the reason for downtimes, and then what is the available time of the machine, how much time it has run, how much time it has been on but it is not used, how much time it has been in error. Depending upon that, OEE will be calculated. So once that is done, performance management tags, we will get to know the performance of the machine. Similarly, when a guy from outside has to come and repair the machine, like week wise or month wise, then a maintenance page will be made in HMI, which tells him what are all the process to be made, so that what kind of maintenance work is done in that particular machine in particular time can be noted, and then it will be displayed to the project manager or a plant level supervisor. Then machine is in error or not can be considered, and then process tags like whatever sensors that we have integrated that comes from the field, which will be noted, and then live data will be read from the controller, and it will be passed on to any kind of softwares or any kind of programming language, so that they can build a model like ML or AI model out of it, and then they can give some meaningful output of the machine or do some reports on it. So basically, when we come to this communication part of a particular machine with some other machine, then the network diagram is very important. For example, in machine level, if you can see my lathe machine is the machine, and the field level you can see some sensors that is integrated to it, or a RFID or a energy meter is integrated to it. So these kinds of sensors will be giving data to my controller. So once I have identified the hardware, I have to know how it will be communicating to my controller. So basically, this RFID is working on serial communication, RS232 ASCII, and then it has some baud rate like 19,200, and then similarly energy meter is having a communication like RS485, and it is baud rate is 9,600. So I
So
have to
what
be
is baud rate?
baud rate is basically when you're doing serial communication, the
It's a
serial
bits per
communication
second.
happens in.
Yeah. It's a bits
Yes,
per
sir.
second actually. How many bits per second you can transfer data serially?
That means how data speed we are getting.
Yeah. So if it is 9600 bits per second, it means you divide by 8, you'll get 1200 bytes basically. 1200 characters per second. That is the speed you can exchange the data with it.
Thank you, sir.
So these kinds of baud rate will be important when you are communicating with the controller serially. Similarly, when it comes to a controller, the data resides into it. but it has to come out so that it can be made useful meaning out of it. So the controller, whatever the data it has to be transferred to some other system. So that is being done using Modbus communication here. In case of our controller, we are using Modbus TCP, and then it will be connected with the SCADA system or MES system, which will be in plant level, so that they will be planning for what will be the plan of action or plan of production for the next day, and who has come and what time they have used it, and every kind of details will be communicating with this MES system, so that they will have the track record of each and everything going on in the machine. So once that is done, this will be plant level. So once it is come to management level, they will be again seeing for the inventory check, whether the raw product is available for next day production or not. Some kind of checks will be made in this management level. And if we want to submit some kind of report about the machine, that will be done to this management level, where they will be showing some statistical records of the particular machine performance, everything. So here the PZ will be communicating with the controller using a physical layer. So I have just connected two computers, so which will be on physical layer, and the controller that is communicating with my SCADA will be on Modbus TCP communication, which is basically industrial protocol. So these are the some kind of features that we are trying to achieve in our smart lathe machine. So first one is the machine safety, second is operator safety, and then efficiency of the machine that we are trying to achieve using OEE, and then health state of the machine, whether the machine is in error mode, it is in running, or it is in idle mode, that can be found. And then digitization using integrating the sensors, alert and arms when they are doing some other work, or some wrong kind of input is given, or where they are crossing the limits that is kept for each machine. The alert and alarm will be helpful for them. And then periodic maintenance and tool changing alert will be given. Like suppose, say for example, maintenance check has to be made 7 days once. So on the sixth day, the maintenance warning will be given, or a notification will be given, which will be acknowledged, or it can be done. Done button can be pressed. So if you are pressing acknowledge, it means that you are knowing that tomorrow, by tomorrow we have to do the maintenance. And if you are giving done, then it means that you have completed the process. So acknowledge will be given on the sixth day, and seventh day, once the maintenance is done, done notification will be given. So reduce power consumption by controlling the cycle start and stop. So whenever the preliminary steps, like mounting the raw product or getting the inventory, and then operator availability, after which the cycle can be started. So by that we are reducing the power consumption. And then machine is secured with RFID authentication. And then we are monitoring for different tags that we will be using further for analytical purpose. And then using a HMI, we are like making operator more interactive with the machine. So what is the advantage of using this smart lathe machine? So we are reducing the power consumption, efficiency is increased, authorized person only can have the access to the machine. So avoiding the damage of the machine is controlled. And then digitization of each data for analytical purposes. Accidents are reduced by implementing safety messages, safety alerts, and then safety controls. And then traceback of each faults can be made once we have gone through, or we have implemented these tags that I was talking about. So with respect to timestamps, we will be getting the data, so that we will be knowing what is actually happening in the floor. Then preventive maintenance and predictive maintenance, depending upon a day or a week or a month, can be made. And then product, machine operator, and tool monitoring is done, so that no one can bypass the system, or no one can use it wrongly. So these are the some of the research and developments that we will be trying in for upcoming months to make this happen. So one is the digital twin for the simulation of real-time physical system, to extract the exact output parameters that we will be getting out of a physical machine. So the idea is to have a digital twin so that whatever the conditions that we would like to do, like for example, a BTech person who wants to do some kinds of experiment to find roughness level. So depending upon the speed rate and then feed rate, depth of cut and speed, he will be varying and conducting some kind of experiments. So in order to reduce that and make it easy for him, we will make a digital twin which will be mimicking the physical system. So whatever the experiment that he wants to do, he will just input the values and get the roughness value output from the system in the simulation way. And then once the roughness value is got, then you will actually go to a particular machine for experimenting 2 or 3 experiments that you would like to conduct to cross verify. Moreover, it will be like 90 to 95% accuracy it will be giving, so that it actually resembles like a physical system. And augmented reality can be used for when a BTech person student is coming and he wants to know what lathe machine is. So we can use a augmented reality using a smartphone or handheld device and show that what are the different components available in this machine, so that you will understand what kinds of process is going on in this particular machine and what kinds of components that are very critical. And then augmented reality can be also used for giving maintenance. So in this case, we will be avoiding using a person coming from outside and doing the maintenance. A student will be well versed, and if he knows all the steps, then he can build a augmented reality exercise for the upcoming or the operator, so that operator can do the maintenance on its own. So machine learning can be implemented, which will be predicting the tool where or when the tool life will be ending, depending upon the vibrations that he is getting from the actual machine. And these are the milestones that we are trying to achieve. So one is to communicate with the SCADA system and show the data with different user roles like administrator, plant manager, operator, supervisor, etc. And then a digital twin, which is obviously the one that I explained earlier. And then ML and AI for analytical purposes to find the cause of the problem or to find the efficiency of the machine. And then we are also having in our bucket list to have a app which will be who will be the customers who will be sending some order, and depending upon that the lathe machine will be available, and operator, once he is available, then the product will be made and given to a particular customer who is ordering. So these are all the things that I would like to actually share with you. So these are the critical things that we are going through when we were implementing using smart lathe machine. So that's all from me.
Yeah, thanks, Vishnu. I think he has given a quite a good overview. And I just want to reflect back the way Vishnu is working on this machine. I think this is what the perspective every one of us should gain actually. So that is the idea. What all he nicely explained what all exercise he's doing to basically implement this particular project. So I think that's a overview he tried to give in the short 30 minutes. And certainly more and more technology part we will be discussing. At the same time, we will be showing you the exact implementation of the same also. This will be a good foundation for your project idea, as well as we would like to give you some exercise that we can do tomorrow in the lab, where Vishnu will be guiding you the implementation on the mechanism kit that we have. I think with this we come to end of the today's class. Any quick question or query you have, we can take it up.